everybody. I am Trustee Gina Lee. I want to welcome you tonight to our forum, COVID Solutions 2. As some of you may remember, we held our COVID Solutions Forum this past summer. And tonight, our speakers have some additional insights and potentially valuable resources for us. Our four speakers will be discussing stress, substance abuse, updates on vaccines, and vaccine availability, and financial challenges. So we hope you enjoy and get information for you and your family. At the end of all the presentations, our speakers will answer any questions you may have. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Karen Goldman Hertz. Karen is the director of the Maxwell Institute. She is a licensed clinical social worker with over 30 years experience in behavioral health field. Karen leads the Maxwell Institute, an outpatient recovery center right here in Tuckahoe. Karen?
Yes, thank you, Gina.
The screen is yours.
Okay, thank you for inviting me tonight, and welcome everybody, and for joining, on this very informative webinar tonight. So as Gina said, I am Karen Goldman Hertz, the director of the Maxwell Institute, which is a division of St. Joseph's and St. Vincent's Hospital. We are an outpatient program, and we treat substance abuse, and we are located right here in the town of Tuckahoe. We are really here to help your community. At Maxwell, we provide treatment to adults and adolescents using alcohol or drugs. And I have to say, as Gina said, I was on the panel in July, and it's sort of hard to believe that we are here now, really a year into this pandemic. We've had to endure many things, and I am going to address how this has impacted substance use across the country and in all of our communities, including Tuckahoe. The statistics are showing us that the nation has really been impacted by COVID in both an increase in substance use and mental health issues, which are closely tied together. So we're going to look at right now some statistics. I'm not going to go on with them because it gets boring, but as of the year ending in May of 2020, which really, if we think about it, is a while ago, there was an increase in overdoses by 18%, which is a lot, totaling 81,230 people in the United States that overdosed. There was also a 14% increase in alcohol consumption and a 41% increase in heavy drinking in women. This is only for the year ending in May 2020, so we don't have more recent statistics yet, but I would really think that the numbers are going to show that that everything has even increased even higher with the pandemic continuing for such a prolonged period of time. So we want to look at mental health a little and what we've seen. We've definitely seen an increase in individuals suffering from mental health, anxiety, stress, fear, depression, and we see the rate of suicide has really gone up. Some of this is definitely related to financial stress, and I know someone's going to be talking about that later, and the strain due to job loss or fear of job loss during the pandemic, which has also impacted many people. And the isolation that we have been seeing with people having to quarantine at home. So during the past year, we really saw that there was a sense of not being in control and not knowing what to do. Most experienced loss during this time of a normal life, and they had to readjust to what we call the new normal. And that new normal looked different day by day or minute by minute. I think a lot of us are used to things like wearing a mask now, when at the beginning, that was like, that was what we had to adjust to. Many people also experience other losses in the past year, such as celebrating any kind of special events, seeing loved ones and friends, or actually having or experience the loss of a loved one or friend due to the disease. With the increase in mental health issues, there is an increased risk of developing an addiction by using alcohol or drugs as a way to cope with these emotions. So that's why they're so closely tied together. As we see mental health issues rising, we also see addiction rising. Throughout the pandemic, and I think I talked about this back in July, liquor was readily available. And as some of my patients told me, it was delivered to their front door by the liquor store or an Uber driver. I just had a patient who told me this yesterday. And her drinking, because she started working from home, totally, she didn't have an addiction before this, but she started drinking daily after a while of being home and having to work from her home. This was easy access for those who were scared to leave their homes, but it contributed to an increase in their drinking patterns. So substance use is sometimes called the disease of isolation. And as people tend to isolate from their friends or loved ones when they are drinking or using drugs, also sometimes in their addiction, a family member may distance themselves from them or cut them off. So the isolation that people had to experience during the pandemic definitely increases people's use of drugs. The treatment of choice for addiction is quite the opposite, where we foster connections to others by using a group modality, and sober support is encouraged both in treatment and in the community, such as AA. With the onset of COVID, maintaining connections was a real challenge or nearly impossible. People were forced to quarantine in their homes, and their support systems were temporarily shut down until an alternative method of communication was set up virtually. AA meetings were cut off in person. The good news is that we're seeing a lot of this start, coming back, and we have in-person AA meetings now. And also programs that are reopening that have in-person or virtual ability to do treatment, coming back. So because of the isolation and emotional stresses that the individuals had to endure, we saw many people with addictions relapse even after periods of some long sobriety. So hopefully some of those people are comfortable in treatment and have come back to treatment, but there's still some that continue not to seek out treatment. So in addiction, most people only seek out treatment when there are negative consequences for their use. Because people are at home more and may not be seeing family members or friends as they were in the past, or having to go to work daily, or children going to school, some are continuing to use without consequences. And this is really quite concerning for, people who understand addiction. So we know right now there are many in need of help that are not engaging in treatment right now. And addiction can impact anyone, just like we saw COVID impacting anyone. And it doesn't matter where you live, how old you are, how smart you are. It is a disease that is treatable, and everyone deserves help. So one of the things that stops people from getting treatment is feeling ashamed. But being ashamed just enables the disease to progress, and not seeking treatment out is a very dangerous situation. We do see, on the other end, people reaching out more frequently for mental health treatment as the pandemic continues. So the programs that treat mental health solely are seeing an uptake in their admissions, whereas those with substance abuse, believe it or not, have been less likely to seek out treatment. Across all the outpatient substance abuse programs in this area, we see that our admissions are down when they should be up, because we know statistically people are at home and they're drinking more or using more drugs. So my thoughts on this are that those who are concerned my thoughts are that there are still those that are out there that need treatment and are fearful of being either exposed to COVID or they have not had the negative consequences that they need to come into treatment. Just as so people know, most treatment programs are open now and they're offering virtual treatment. So for those who are fearful of coming back to the program now or have underlying conditions, you can get treatment because most programs are offering virtual treatment. At Maxwell, we are offering both a hybrid of treatment in person, following the CDC guidelines, and also doing virtual groups. We have seen many of our patients, when we reopened our doors to in-person treatment, they want to return to in-person treatment because they felt so isolated. So actually, we have most of our people willing to come in, doing a hybrid of in-person and virtual, treatment online. So in terms of the future, I really am hoping that as our community continues to get vaccinated, more people will feel safer seeking out treatment. But again, treatment is available virtually now, so there should be no reason why anyone cannot come into treatment if they need it. So just in terms of a few tips, I think that for the future and right now, I think where things are opening up a little now, going forward, I think individuals should find ways to connect to each other because the isolation that people have felt has really increased the numbers of mental health issues and substance abuse issues. People need to find, and they have been finding, creative ways to continue to celebrate things. And as the weather comes, is getting warmer now, it's good to get outside, exercise, and find safe ways to interact with others. So lastly, if you know someone or if you yourself need help, please don't hesitate to reach out. The earlier the intervention for treatment, the less likely one suffers from other negative consequences, such as physical illness or legal issues or overdose or even death. The Maxwell Institute is in your backyard, and you can always contact us, even if it's just for advice. Our number, I'm going to share it now, is 337-6033, or I think they're going to post it on the Town of Tuckahoe, if I'm not mistaken, and you can get all the information about Maxwell. So I just want to say thank you to everyone who's on this call tonight, and thank you to the Town of Tuckahoe for having me speak tonight. And Gina Lee, thank you.
Thank you, Karen. We had posted a flyer on the local channel.
Okay.
I believe it's on the local website. So there is a phone number. There is additional information if anybody wants to look into that.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, next I would like to introduce a dear friend of mine, Dr. Donna Martuge, founder of Beyond a Moment in Time. Dr. Martuge is a leader in the field of education, psychology, and emotional and behavioral interventions for children. Donna has over 25 years of experience in our schools and community. She's a consultant to children, parents, and families, helping support their success in school, at home, and in life. Donna will discuss the psychological impact of COVID-19 and the virtual learning that our adolescents and children are doing at the moment. Donna?
Thank you. Thank you, Gina. Thank you for having me here, and thank you everyone for joining us. It's always great to be with all of you. I love it live because I love to get people up and moving. I think it's really important to do. However, I'm just going to walk you through some steps. So yes, I'm Donna Martuge, and I do work with mainly with teens in our community, but with teens and families. And I can't believe it was July, just like we heard earlier, that we were here last time talking about the impact of COVID and how we recognize signs that we might be concerned or that let us know whether we should be concerned about our kids or not. what some things are that we might see happening with our teens or our younger kids. And I don't want to revisit that. I think that that might be posted somewhere for you to be able to see still. So I don't want to go back to things we've already covered. I think right now the questions, I've asked people to send me questions for tonight so I can try and answer them for you. And I'm going to start with that because I did get a nice response to those questions. One of the big questions was really about how do we go back to normal? All the schools are talking about sending kids back in. Do I choose between hybrid, virtual? Am I sending my child back to school? I feel anxious about it. How could I tell my child not to feel anxious about it? What do I need to think about in regards to their mental health while we're actually talking about getting them back, right? That came up multiple times throughout the last 2 days that I've had the postings up, the messages that I received, and I want to make sure that we talk about that. So first, I want to say one of the things I always ask people to do is I want you to start by checking in with you. And I do this with people who come and work with me. I want them to really become aware of what's going on with them. It's the end of the day. It's 7:47. You guys have already worked, already been with your families, doing what you need to do. It's a busy day. Just sort of touch base with your body right now and check in and see how you are. I tell adults, teenagers, it doesn't matter. Your stomach, your throat, whatever is going on throughout your body, tired, fatigue, just be aware of it. Why do I want you to do that? Because when you're trying to get your kids to tell you how they're feeling, often they don't have the words for it. And when we get them to start being aware of what's going on in their body, they start to connect that to what they're feeling, and eventually they're able to verbalize it a lot better. If you're doing it, they're doing it, it helps the conversation get better. And then when they say, I have a stomach ache, it might be more connected to a quiz than it is connected to actually a flu. Something similar, that starts to get developed in a conversation when you help them become aware of their body. It starts with you. It starts with you modeling it. And although I didn't intend for the focus today to be about parents, there's going to be a lot more about how we're taking care of ourselves and what we're modeling for our kids than about our kids per se, because they copy what we show them, not what we tell them, right? We can tell kids a bunch of things. They take about 20% of what you hear and do more with 80% of what they see. So our words are kind of, I don't want to say pointless, but if we're not practicing what we preach, we really aren't helping the matter. And when your kids are teens, if they're not teens now, they will call you on it, right? My daughter will say to me, Mom, you've written 4 books about this stuff, and I can't believe you just did that. And she'll call me out. Yep, I just did something I know I tell parents we want to try and avoid. So they will start to call you on it. It's really important that we start saying to ourselves, that self-care, that being aware of how I'm doing, that me saying you need to take that 20-minute walk today because you look frustrated, has to go back to, I need to step outside and take a walk today because I'm getting frustrated. Because as they're getting older and as we've spent more time together, they're recognizing where we're lacking in integrity sometimes as far as let's take care of ourselves. You need to take care of yourself, honey. You need to wash your hands. You need to stop and take a break. You need to go do this. But Mom, you didn't do that today. Or Dad, you didn't do that today. It seems sort of minuscule, but it actually is tremendous. And when I'm working with teens, it comes up all the time. She can't tell me that. My dad can't say that to me. I watch him do this every day, and he's going to tell me I can't do that. So we're talking about mental health. And if we want kids to believe that it's important, then we need to show them that we think it's important, not just when we're talking to them, if that makes sense. Okay. So that was one thing that I really want to emphasize. So as we checked our body and we're in tune with it, the other things I ask people is, what do you do? What do you do to make yourself feel good? And we did this last time. I got everybody to stand up. Normally right now I'd be on a stage, I'd be playing some music, I'd have you guys clapping your hands, and I tell me now what your body feels like. And you would notice that you now feel a little bit more joy, a little bit more connected to everybody around you, and you actually feel different in your body, where if you felt something stuck in your stomach or you felt something stuck in your throat or your head or something wasn't feeling right, it's gone, it moves, it shifts. So movement is one of the biggest ways to get anyone to shift whatever kind of mood they're in. Now I'm going to tell you something that I don't love to say, and I don't think enough people in the field of mental health are saying. We're coming out of a pandemic. We're not out of it. I don't even know how close we are out of it. I know that we are moving towards getting kids back in school and people are back to work and things are opening up slowly but surely. And it's really hard for any person to say with true confidence exactly how this is going to impact yourself, your family, and your kids when we have never lived through a pandemic before, and neither have they. And just like a war or any other thing that someone may go through, often a lot of the impact is after, because the during is when you're sort of shoving everything away and going, let me just get through it. We're just going to get to the end of this. There's light at the end of the tunnel. And we put a lot aside while we put on that front and say, we just have to get through this. So I think that some of the common things we know with our kids is you're going to know the differences. Are their grades dropping? Are they moody? Teenagers, really? You know, that's not so uncommon for some of them. But when it's time to get back and get connected, what you might start to see is students who are refusing to go, students who would prefer to stay home and are a little bit anxious about leaving their family now, students who are not comfortable with actually separating because they've spent so much time at home, or parents who are feeling anxious and their kids are feeling that and they're not so comfortable, which is okay. What we want to be able to do is make sure that we create that conversation and we can validate that for them. And we could tell them, because however they're feeling is real and true for them. I understand why you feel that way. And even if you don't agree with the feeling, or you don't understand the anxiety, you could say, I hear that you're feeling anxious. There's a lot of people who are feeling anxious right now. We brought a bunch of kids back into our school today. I was working with some of them and they all said, this feels really strange to me. Well, what feels strange? I haven't been in the halls in a long time. How many people are here today? How many people are going to be in the room? They have a million questions about what this is going to look like. And some of them have said to me, and you know what? At the end of the day, I met with a few of the kids and they said to me, I don't want to be here if I'm going to be sitting at a separate lunch table, because I'd rather be home without my mask on and feeling connected to people than actually being in a classroom or in a school building where I can't actually say to my friends, hey, what's up? Or sit down with them at lunch. I'm texting them in the lunchroom because they're sitting 3 to 6 feet away. I'm not comfortable. I feel less connected that way. Those are all really valid feelings. So I know that we are all pushing, or I should say there's a huge push for people to go back and school to be open. And I think it's really important. And I think that there's also a real huge importance that we're aware that not everybody's ready for that, whether that be parents or kids, for multiple reasons, because the new normal isn't all that normal for the kids. And going to school and keeping the mask on all day and staying separate and washing your hands. And after everything they've heard on the news, can I be safe? There's a lot more kids in the building. Those are very real concerns that everybody has, no matter what the age is. So try working that through with a child, any age from 5 to 15. They're all valid concerns that we want to acknowledge. And you may want to say, if you have the ability, depending on the age of your child, we can honor that. Maybe you don't have to go back right now. Maybe we could let people go back and you go back in 4 weeks, but you're going to want to hear how they feel about it, no matter what age they are. So I think one of the big things that's going to happen now is we need to start the conversation of, okay, well, school's reopening. How do you feel about going back to school? If you haven't had that conversation yet. One of the things we do know is that it's not just the kids that we need to worry about. The diagnosis for depression, for anxiety, we heard the suicide rates, all of that has gone up tremendously. And that's not just for kids, that's for adults too. Adults have really struggled with grieving. You've lost a lot in the last year, your traditions, whether that be your holidays, celebrations, leaving your house. Some people have lost jobs, money, work. There's been so many stressors. Life is different. So when we go back and we sort of pretend that it's not, in a way, if we're putting that on, I think we do a disservice in a lot of ways. So I think it's good to have the real conversations with our kids and with our families and let them tell you how they really, really feel about it. I don't know if I actually put my phone number on that flyer, Gina, I'm not sure, but if any of you have specific questions about your situation, you could always call or send a message. But if it's not on the flyer, I can tell you it's 914-364-3438. And my email is literally my name, Dr. Donna Martuge @gmail.com. So you can email me those questions. There is a wealth of information to cover. And what I'm going to say to you is the things that I'm looking at the most now are what the students are feeling and experiencing as they're coming back, I think that's when you're going to see even more signs of differences in grades, resistance to possibly going to school, and some of the mental health concerns, because now when you're coming out of it is when they start looking back and going, wow, you know, I missed prom, or I missed this, or I haven't seen my friends in 4 months, or the friends group changed and this doesn't feel right anymore. There's going to be a lot for them to process, just like you would have to process after any event. Plus, many of us have experienced loss, and have gone through even our own feeling of being disconnected to others. So go out and do something as a family in a public place that's open, where you're not going to be around a lot of people, whether it's walking through the park. If you haven't done it, going to the Bronx Zoo, walking through the botanical gardens. They're not crowded right now. A lot of those places are pretty open and not crowded. Let them experience what it's like to be out in public and doing those things in small pieces. If you feel like you need to do that, there's multiple strategies that you can do. And if you have specific concerns, feel free to reach out.
Thank you, Donna.
Okay.
Donna will be, on at the end. So if anybody has questions, she'll be happy to answer them, along with Karen and along with Dr. Sullivan and Jim. So now I'd like to introduce Dr. Mack Sullivan from Fitness and Recovery. Dr. Mack is a primary care physician that covers a large range of specialties, including COVID-19 testing, COVID-19 antibody testing, wellness checkups, physicals, flu shots, immunizations for the general and geriatric and pediatric care. Dr. Sullivan?
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to be on tonight. What we've done, we started like everybody else back in November of 19, thinking we had a big problem with mycoplasma pneumonia and walking pneumonia and bronchitis, and lo and behold, we soon found out it was actually the COVID-19. The first several months of this process were fraught with disinformation, misinformation, and often outright lies. And unfortunately, over time, the science over the last year or so has been completely displaced from reality, from management, from public policy. When this really began to hit the United States, we had tests for it, but nothing that was exceptional, because at the time, Corona, simply Corona as opposed to the COVID-19, was ubiquitous and certainly not considered something that posed a significant threat. As time evolved, obviously it did. The populations in the early going, particularly the elderly and the first responders, were vulnerable for different reasons. The elderly more because they either had truly old immune systems, or for the most part, they were had multiple other medical problems and comorbid conditions that presented additional challenges that COVID was enough now added to that to overwhelm them. And in the case of those in nursing homes and hospital settings, they're all clumped in groups together. The second engagement of patients were, of course, the first responders: fire, police, EMS, and then hospital, medical, and ancillary staff. These people were simply overexposed. And as people went down, more people stood up, more people were doing more shifts. And again, over time, they were just exposed more. And the biggest thing that we saw bringing everything down after the really horrific numbers that were showing up in early 2020 were the awareness of the signs and symptoms. And I think more than anything, that's actually curbed this is awareness. Not so much awareness about not to touch a sacred cow, but about social distancing and all the more mythical, subjective things that can contribute to it, but awareness of what signs and symptoms do I need to know that say I better get to a doctor. I admitted my first person, and I think we've admitted at this point over 700 patients for COVID for the hospital since February of last year. And horrible stat, of the first 11, 6 passed. Of the next 700 plus, none passed. I had nothing to do with that. The patients had everything to do with that. What made the difference there was people simply came in early. When you're coming in day 8, day 9, it's just a virus, I'll get past. Nah, I go to the gym every day, I'll get past this, I'll do fine. All of a sudden you're coming in and so much of your oxygen has been displaced from your hemoglobin. So much of your hemoglobin and your red blood cells are worthless. And even such drastic things as intubation can't get enough oxygen in to overcome. And that was the big mortality we saw in the early going, and the huge correction we saw from March deep into the summer and now is simply how aware people are, and those who do have it are getting in much sooner. The second bump that came as the summer ran into the fall, it's questionable in the literature if it was a second bump at all. In the past, we've all gone to a doctor or gone to an urgent care, and we've had signs and symptoms of a cold and flu. And well, if it's a bacterial infection, we're going to get antibiotics. And if it's not, we can't do anything, it's a virus. So we did the flu test. Flu was positive. Sir, ma'am, head home, fluids, rest, call your doctor. You'll get past it eventually. We never actually tested for it. We tested for it to differentiate from something bacterial. All of a sudden, we're testing for something. In a process where 93% of people are actually symptom-free and never know they have it, you're going to start coming across a lot of people who got it. Now, add that to the terrible stories coming out in the first half of the year. Yes, a bitter election cycle, and the never-ending newsreel, the hysteria starts. And now you see lines. Literally at my office here, we had, between myself and the practice downstairs, we had lines of 700 to 800 people a day. It was unbelievable. And we still have now people come and block out time, but you still have over 100 people a day pouring into places that are used to seeing significantly less, and a lot of it is fueled by the hysteria and to some extent bits and pieces of information. The COVID testing in the early going was honestly criminal at best. The COVID testing in the early going was horrible. And by April, May, we actually had tests. The best non-RNA test, the quote-unquote rapid test, 40% of the time, it's wrong when it's positive. 30% of the time, it's wrong when it's negative. You're going to send people back to work on that. You're going to send people back to school on that. If the state's paying for it, which is the overwhelming number of places, people just getting back in line, knowing eventually they were going to get the test that they needed and either get their time off or get their work. There was get to be able to go back to work. There was a lot of problems in that model. The RNA testing, right now it's down to about a 24-hour cycle, mostly because there aren't as many people doing it. But at one point during the summer into the fall, it was 6 and 7 days. The national capacity for RNA testing had been profoundly overwhelmed long ago. I think as a country, we can do about 780 to 800,000 tests a day, and we were ordering in the millions. And just it accumulated, and the time it built up. of course, that's more downtime. The biggest thing, one of the biggest things my office saw was the relative shutdown of the ERs and the relative shutdown of other doctors' offices. If it's not COVID, go home. My practice historically admitted probably 3 to 4 people a week. I would say from April until October, November, we had days we were admitting 5 to 6 a day, simply because they couldn't go anywhere else, or there was nowhere else to go, or where they went somewhere, you don't have COVID, go home. There were other medical problems than COVID, and a lot of those are still being crushed under the rug. With the onset of the antibodies, we debuted the first single test for the IgG and the IgM. That came out in May. Effective test, the real people who were using it was people who wanted to get back into the field. Either they were a first responder, and it was important to them to be able to go out and work. And we did several municipalities. We did several different groups, and overall we did about 30,000 antibody tests, and to date we've done about 50,000 COVID tests. It's been insane. The thing is, a lot of these places had code words. You got to have someone, if you're on an ambulance, if you're on a police car, if you're on a fire truck, who can go into that scene and is safe. So people are now starting to use the antibodies as, well, I can go. There's the question of the antibodies. Are our own native antibodies good? There was, again, a lot of disinformation and misinformation there. Right now, I'm happy to talk about that later in questions. The important thing to think about is, no, we don't know what levels we need of these things because we haven't studied them. Every day, someone comes in for a work physical, for mumps, measles, rubella, it's low. We've been looking at this since 1930. We know exactly how much it should be to protect the overwhelming, if not almost complete population. If it's low, we boost it. This has been around since August of 19. We have no idea. The thing I tried to emphasize to people in a very black and white, wrap your head around it quickly sort of way. If you're talking to me and you're on this side of the grass and you have antibodies, well, your antibodies are enough for you. Does that mean we can take all those, such a small population, and say this is enough? No. And that's why a lot of people who got antibodies May, June, July, I didn't get levels. I got positive or negative. Levels were considered illegal and misleading that. The other thing that's important to consider is these antibodies, IgM and IgG, are the same antibody processes that your body uses for mumps, measles, rubella, polio. These are the same things that have protected you your entire life. As a public health issue, where they're afraid people are going to say, hey, I'm good, and we don't know that, then the idea of trying to undermine those is almost ethical. It's important to appreciate, however, that when you're considering if you want to take those viruses, to take the vaccine, there's a lot of pros and cons on the vaccine, that if you do have them, it's something you have to consider. With the advent of the vaccine, you would think as the epicenter of this disease in the country, we would be at the forefront. Actually, when it comes to numbers, distributed percentage of the population who's been vaccinated, efficiency in terms of how many times was an area promised a certain number and they got it all. How many times did they get the second one as well? How many times did they just have to close because they ran out? We're in the lowest quartile, the bottom 20% of the country. there's a lot that we need to do, not anybody in this call, but Albany in general, that needs to do to get in front of this. In general, the good news is when you look at the actual M&M, the morbidity and mortality, despite what you might hear in the media, it has been inexorably improving. And again, the biggest thing, the single thing that, of course, no one can take credit for is people talking, is people learning and educating and actually getting to a provider quicker. It's a big, big deal. I was probably admitting April, May, June, I would say 90 to 95% of people went into the hospital. Right now, if you get admitted from my office, you left in an ambulance. The overwhelming majority of people go to Value, go to Wilmot, go to your pharmacy, get yourself a pulse ox, keep in touch with your doctor. We typically have people check in 3-4 times a day. I don't want to hear it. I want a picture. I want to look at that pulse ox. If your heart rate's too high, we're going to talk about hydration. If your pulse ox is drifting low, if it changes 1 or 2 points when you walk to the bathroom, that's one thing. If you're over 90, I'm psyched. If you're under 8, if you're under 90 and it's changing to 3 or 4 points, who's at home? And now we're going to start going over it every 2 hours. A lot of this can be managed, especially with relatively healthy people at home. The big thing, okay, to consider, short of pre-existing disease. I don't mean a little asthma in high school. I don't mean a little diverticulitis. I mean cystic fibrosis. I mean big stuff, sarcoid, MS. True, nobody under 40 has really had a problem if they're otherwise free of this. So the thing is, this is something of an older population. Why? Because it breaks down to our immune system. And I think a lot of people have gotten a little bit of an education on that in terms of when anything, COVID, anything, hits your body and then hits your blood. And while it's in your blood, how long does it take to get to that precious IgM phase? Because that is your window. When you get to IgM, for all intents and purposes, you're not spreading it anymore. I have people who come in who tested positive for antibodies in May. They never had a symptom. They never had a positive COVID test. They think they're typhoid Mary. And it contributes to the people staying at home and it becoming much more to them than it actually is because they don't have the education. And it seems to me when I watch the news, whatever they can't get out in that precious 45 to 75 seconds, they're not going to say it. It takes a good minute for an educated, conscientious person to really process this. I'm not the brightest bulb in the chandelier. It's taken me about 25 years to get this down. So to really understand, when am I at risk? How does my kid have antibodies? They're fine, but I don't. Something's wrong. No, their immune system is light years compared to yours. And it's important to realize as we age, how does the time to get to IgG in our own body's immune system change? When that happens, all of a sudden, whoa, I've got to get to that window. So for most people who start to have symptoms, probably most people being anybody over 40, I tell people, if you know who Arthur Fonzarelli was, and you know who Julie McCoy was, you remember those names, you actually have a Bon Jovi t-shirt somewhere in your collection, you're at risk. And the thing is, reason being is for us to form IgG, and of course the older populations, that we now you actually have some amount of your own immunity, it takes time. And that window, that magic 9, 10, 11, 12 days, that's where you're going to go to the hospital, you're not. So proper hydration. Damn bottle of Evian has gotten more people sick. Proper hydration. None of us as kids had water. We had flat ginger ale. We had Pepsi. They forced milk down our throats. We had soup. And that's what you're supposed to have. But educating. When do I say, okay, this pulse ox isn't good? Wait a minute, I'm not coughing anymore. I'm coughing blood now. Get to a doctor. And oh, by the way, there was a list of this stuff, of diseases that went from my office to Stop and Shop and back before COVID. It might be one of those too. So it's been real important. And I think the biggest thing is that kind of education. With respect to the vaccine, I'm trying to hear everyone, and I'm trying to basically be a sounding board. I think it's a very, very personal decision. I sent out a constant contact about a month or so ago saying, hey, I support it. The Pfizer, I support it. Support it because I don't think we're going to get hurt specifically from that. The science is elegant. The science is the future of cancer for the next, cancer therapy for the next 200 years. Putting it together in this kind of time from about 8 different fields, and truly the top, the best people. And the people who developed this, these weren't the cash cows at Pfizer, at Wellcome, at Glaxo, at Bayer. These are damn good scientists at academic institutions working for peanuts who love it. And boy, they did it right. That being said, stage 3 of the FDA, stage 4 of the FDA, which every single drug you take every day has been through, minimal at best, a token, has to be considered. When this started coming out, a friend of mine who I graduated with in '95, we were driving home one night, and I just had her on the phone, and I got caught in an accident at Taconic, waiting in line. For about an hour, we sat there and said, since we graduated, how many medicines went through all 4 stages and got pulled back anyway? We got to 62 by the time I got to the Bear Mountain Bridge. We're going to do hundreds of millions of people with something we've never tried? You know what? That's a legitimate question. There were women fighting for thalidomide in the 60s. They wanted to have children. Sadly, Bayer kept that drug in the market for 4 years after it was statistically undeniable. Kids are being born with no limbs. There's a lot of things to think about. Is this vaccine, again, it's elegant, the science is fantastic. That being said, what is this? This is binding mRNA. We've never done that. There are no studies about that. I could go through so many examples where, neat, nifty, look how smart we are. Wait a minute, we're not. So some patients are adamant, by all means. I think it's important to look at the pros and cons, and something a lot of people don't want to do in this. You got to make your own decision. And just like education and information, I think made the biggest difference for 2020. That's what's going to make the difference here. Is there a whole political side to this? We may need to prove this to go to concerts, to go on airlines, to go. Yeah, that's a different animal. Might you need that paper someday? Sure. But right now, when it's, can I get it? If I can, do I? And what do I tell my loved ones? That's a big deal. And I'm happy to answer any questions about that. I'm in East Chester. I'm right across from CVS. I'm in the same lot as Safeway Cleaners. I'm right upstairs. Our number is 914-395-3691. And email is easy. It's Dr. Mack, DRMACK @fitnessandrecovery.com. And there's different ways of find us on the web. I'm happy to answer any questions. I never closed. My practice is very, very heavy in first responders. I spent a lot of time personally at Ground Zero. I've taken care of them since day one. And when this began to break, a lot of the police departments and fire departments and DPWs who had relationships reached out to us. So we went back to 7 days a week, and we were going 15 hours a day for a while on the antibodies and the testing. So we've kind of been in this. Any questions anyone has, I'm happy to answer.
Thank you, Dr. Sullivan. Okay, lastly, I would like to introduce Jim Coleman. Many of you have known him as the Executive Director of Westchester County IDA under County Executive Rob Astorino. Jim is President and CEO of Coleman Crest Advisors. He will be addressing financial challenges and job loss as a result of the lockdown. He is known as an economic developer, high-energy motivational speaker, author, consummate deal maker, and Fortune 500 executive. Jim will discuss hot job sectors post-COVID and 21st century job skills that employers are expecting. Jim?
Thank you so much, Village Trustee Gina Lee, and thank you for bringing us all together, for having this wonderful event this evening. It feels great to be at home and to be among neighbors, and I just want to applaud you on this great evening and your leadership and everything that you're doing for all of us here in Tuckahoe. I'm going to pull up my presentation that I have here, and I'll continue talking. I think I've got about 8 to 10 minutes or so to go through this quick presentation. This has been a very challenging year for all of us. It has been a challenging year for myself in that not only have we all been touched in some way by COVID, but I lost my wife over the last year, Kathy. She's listening in from heaven via Zoom and all of these wonderful ways that we're communicating. But it was a tragic loss to lose her last year, as well as I was affected by COVID myself in November. I got it, and quite frankly, I didn't know if I was going to make it. You know, you just don't know if you're going to be the one. And we all have really had just a very challenging time. And so the presentation I'm going to take you through tonight is what I've done to maintain my own sanity and my own balance. And Dr. Donna and Dr. Karen were talking about these major mental health challenges that we're all experiencing right now because of this pandemic. But I do want to let you know on the good note and on the positive side is that this year we're going to go from pandemic to pandemonium. The market is up. You saw the market was up yesterday by over 600 points. The only reason why it was down a little bit today was because a lot of people made a lot of money yesterday and sold off. A lot of our companies are coming back. We're getting the vaccine. You can see in each of the major states all across the country, the level of incidence of infections are going down. And so this is going to be a year where America is going to come back. We're going to be hot in Tuckahoe, New York, Kentucky, and throughout the country. And so I'm going to take you through the kind of thinking that I've used to help me to survive this very difficult past year. It really is based off of what I learned from my great-grandfather's experience. And then I'm going to share with you key things that you can do today if you're looking to jumpstart your career, find a new job opportunity. It couldn't be a better time to be able to look for a great opportunity. Many of you have maybe heard this story, but one of the most, well, I would say the best president that we've ever had was Abraham Lincoln. And in 1863, through his Emancipation Proclamation, he proposed to abolish slavery. The states had to ratify it, and by 1865, it became law through the 13th Amendment. But thank God for Abraham Lincoln. It created several options for freed Black people in the United States, including my great-grandfather. March 27, 1888, he had to make a decision about his life. He was about 41 years old, and he could have said, you know what? I don't know how to read, don't know how to write. I can't join the local chamber, can't go to the University of Kentucky, don't have a lot of money, can't go to a commercial bank. Life is tough for me. I might as well just, give up and do nothing and be a victim. That was the first option that he had. The second option that he had was to retreat, which was at the time Congressman Henry Clay, who was also the Speaker of the House. He came up with the American Colonization Society that allowed all freed Blacks that wanted to leave the United States, you can leave. And I had a relative who grew up on the same little farm that I've grown up at here in Lexington, Kentucky. His name was William D. Coleman. He left along with his mother, went down to New Orleans, crossed the Atlantic. It took 6 months to get there. They landed there in Monrovia, which today is the capital of Liberia. And about 12 miles inland, is a place called Clay Ashland. It's named after Henry Clay, his last name, and Ashland is the name of his plantation here in Lexington. He later became the 13th president of Liberia. If I were back then, I probably would have said, you know what, I'm out of here. I like traveling. I'm going to retreat and get the heck out of here too. I can't deal with this life. And as we're going through the challenges that we've dealt with, many of us may be in that mindset. First option, you know what, I'm just going to give up and just, I can't take this. Two, I'm going to retreat. Maybe I might use drugs or alcohol or just kind of go in a different direction. Third option that my great-grandfather had, and by the way, this is his granddaughter. Her name is Genevieve Coleman, the one in the blue they gave me. I went to the first reunion. William D. Coleman, that's his great-grandson and also his great-granddaughter. And I went to the family reunion 5 years ago and met them. I'm going to each of the reunions every single year. I'm building a brand new house on my little farm down here in Lexington, Kentucky. And in 2022, I'm going to be having the International Coleman Family Reunion. Third option, which I encourage us all while we're listening to this evening, is to seize the moment. And what I mean by that is not focus on all the things that are going wrong, but focus on all the things that are going well. The market's up. We're getting ready to get all of our vaccination shots all across the country. We're going to wipe this pandemic out, and we're going to capitalize on it by getting back to work. And while we're doing that, we're going to get our skills prepared. We're going to be aware of the different ways of how to get a job, and we're going to jump on those different job opportunities. Companies are coming back. Companies right now in a lot of different industries called the reopening industries are already starting to hire. So there couldn't be a better time. But my great-grandfather on March the 27th, instead of saying, you know what, I can't do this, I can't do that, I'm a black man in America and there are no opportunities for me, he said, you know what, I'm going to seize the moment. I'm not going to focus on the imperfect things that are going on in the country right now, which there were a lot of imperfections. And there are a lot of imperfections today. We all know on this call, though, that this country is the best country in the whole wide world. And that's the way he thought. He said, you know what, there may be imperfections, but there's no better place to be. And he took a loan at the Union Benevolent Society. Booker T. Washington created this concept that allowed Black people to bring all of their little pennies and coins together and to take loans out from each other. And he took a loan out for $1,200, and he became the power of one by seizing the moment. And over 300 of his descendants over the next 133 years, including myself, have been able to go to college as a result of this. So I encourage all of us to seize the moment and take this time out to be the power of one. Be that individual that's going to seize the moment and to take care of your family, to make an even bigger impact in Tuckahoe, in Westchester County, and throughout New York. As a result of him seizing the moment, my grandparents, in one generation later, were able to raise 7 kids. You can see this is a picture that was taken in 1926. They had just come home from church. That's the house they built out on the farm. You can see it looks like a McMansion. Looks like in Scarsdale or Tuckahoe or Westchester County in one generation, all because my great-grandfather didn't give up and he didn't quit. And he seized the moment. These are their 7 children. I like to say this is the Kennedy-esque picture. Again, this is about the 3rd generation after slavery, and they all went to college as a result of my great-grandfather not giving up. The guy down there on the bottom that's laughing, he's laughing because that was the night before my parents got married on February the 4th, 1950. This is February the 3rd, 1950, and they were excited. And it created wealth for my family, and they were all very successful. They all went to college, and all of their descendants have been able to go to college as a result of that one person deciding to seize the moment. This is the farm that I grew up on, 1950 to 2005 is the look of Coleman Crest. My parents built this little ranch house. I'm in the process right now of building a new house on the farm, but this little farm paid for my education to go to Howard University. As a result of going to Howard University, and this is a picture of all the graduation day, my parents, my wife, Kathy, and her mother down there at the bottom, that's Dr. James Cheek, I went from a college reject where Howard turned me down the first time, and my mother didn't give up. God bless her. She wrote a letter to Dr. James Cheek that you see up there where I'm shaking his hand. She said, if you give Jim Coleman a chance, he'll be successful one day, and you will be happy that you accepted him. We'll pay up front, and if he doesn't succeed after the first semester, we'll bring him back home. Thank God my mother wrote that letter, because my life is about a mother's letter. And after my 4 years at Howard University, I went from being a college reject to receiving the award from Dr. James Cheek, who overturned the decision to let me go to Howard University. He then gave me the award of the finest student at Howard University that got the award for Who's Who in America's colleges and universities. It's all about seizing the moment and being persistent and being focused. After I got out of school, I went to work for 4 Fortune 500 companies, Oscar Mayer, Pepsi, Philip Morris, and American Express. And I gained 21st century skills even during the 20th century. And I got these skills by working on the farm, being exposed to what my great-grandfather did to be able to transform all of our lives, seeing my parents sacrificing and working hard to be able to send us all to school, as well as all of my experiences all the way up to Westchester County. And then the last big job that I had was down in Prince George's County, where I was the president and CEO of the Economic Development Corporation for Prince George's County. And now I'm in my own business and I own my own farm, and I'm working on those two, and I'm busier than ever. But these are the 21st century job skills that we all must have, whether if you're working for somebody or if you're in your own business: critical thinking, creativity, collaboration, communication skills, information literacy, media literacy, being informed about what's going on out there, technology literacy. We all are a lot better than we were a year ago. We're all using Zoom. We're using more technology than ever. Being flexible and not giving up, being able to see things differently, leadership, initiative, productivity, and social skills. These are all 21st century job skills that employers are looking for today. I want to change gears now and talk to you about activating your job search. You're in one of the hottest areas in not just the United States, but in the world. You live in Tuckahoe, which is absolutely one of the most beautiful villages in the whole state of New York. You live in Westchester County. You live in New York. And while the state's experiencing a lot of challenges as a result of this pandemic, you couldn't be in a better place to be able to look for a new hot job and a great start to your career. I want to let you know, I know about these various resources in Westchester County because when I led the IDA, the Industrial Development Agency in Westchester County, I was familiar with these resources. These are resources that are supported by the state as well as through the federal government. Each state and each county across the United States, they have what we call the one-stop centers. We've got a one-stop center in Westchester County. It's called the Westchester Putnam Career Center. It's focused on connecting employers with job seekers. And they provide information for both to be able to help them to connect, to be able to build wealth for our communities through making our families stronger through good high-wage jobs. These are the various locations throughout Westchester County where you can get support. You don't have to be on your own and give up. There are all kinds of resources through these 5 incredible offices. There are angels waiting there to help you. We're all paying tax dollars through the federal government. Don't feel shy. Use these resources. We're paying for it. And you can get training support and a host of support on being able to get prepared for interviews and to be able to put your whole strategy together on going after your next career move. The services offered by the One Stop Center in Westchester County and Putnam County include career assessment tools, trying to understand what am I good at and what should I do next? And what are the things I like to do? And what are my skills and experiences of where I can apply them and get the next big opportunity? They offer child care and transportation assistance. If you need help to get to your next job interview, they help you on that and give you reimbursement. They provide access to current labor market information on where the jobs are. You can sign up for recruitment job fairs. You can also receive a lot of support through training and tuition assistance. And I'll get into that in a little while. And then there's always going to be easy access to computer workstations to be able to go through the information of what's out there on the hottest jobs in Westchester County, as well as in the state of New York. They've got weekly career development workshops. I encourage all of you, even if you have a good job, this is the time right now to start looking for a job, even if you've got a good job, because employers are there is going to be a shortage. With the way the market is going right now, there is going to be a shortage this year on finding good quality employees. You've got a lot of folks that have been off for a year. Most of us have. And many of us have gotten in a case where we may not be able to go back to work because we've enjoyed life not going to work. So you're going to be competitive on finding a good job if you can go in there and show them how you can solve the employer's problems. And if you demonstrate that you've got those 21st century job skills, but it starts off with having an effective resume, an effective job search, being able to interview and to be able to close the deal, and then making sure that you're networking and using these assessment tools to know where you stand at all times. Westchester Putnam Workforce One-Stop Center has a job bank. It tells you all the information that you need about local jobs, as well as both in the county, as well as in the state. Go after it. They've got current jobs. They've got information about the market. You can go in there and find out what are the types of markets and industries that I need to focus on that are hot right now that pay a lot of money. This next slide here shows you a position that is burning up right now. IT, you can see the starting salaries. This is more on a national, but in Westchester County, the salaries are oftentimes even higher than this. But with a certification of anywhere from 8 weeks up to 18 months, you can transform your life and your career and make anywhere from 40 to 70,000 plus. The beauty of this is these types of jobs, you could do them from your home and make a ton of money. The jobs that I'm going to go through on these next few slides, including this slide, these are also jobs that you can work at for 2 or 3 years. And guess what? You can go in your own business and make a ton of money. And to be able to have the flexibility and to be able to have the kind of money you need to make to be able to take care of your needs. Grant support available, again, through federal dollars that Westchester gets, Prince George's County gets, Fayette County here in Lexington. They all get this money to provide grant support from anywhere from $4,000 for Pell Grants, as well as financial aid and tuition to be able to support any kind of training that you get to get into the IT field. It is burning up. Next big area would be healthcare training certification. Starting salary is 25 up to 45. Again, that's national. You look at Westchester County, excuse me, Westchester County is even higher than that. Certification can take anywhere from 4 to 13 weeks. A lot of these jobs, including this particular area, you can earn while you're learning. Classes can be taken at night. Certification for a lot of these different levels of the ranges that I'm looking at the bottom range from $2,000 up to $4,000. If you want to get a degree or 2-year associate's degree, you can go to Westchester Community College and to be able to get that. But these are the hot jobs right now: certified nursing assistant, someone that can take the blood, medical code biller, pharmacy technician, medication technician. These are jobs right now that if you've got a certification in any of these areas, I don't care what's going on with the economy, you are going to be in demand. Transportation, this is one that I love, and especially for our returning citizens. The demand for transportation is really strong right now. And why? Because we're all ordering online. No one's going shopping anymore. And there's a need for people who can drive trucks and buses. Average starting salary is 30 up to 63 plus. The commercial driver's license certification can take anywhere from 2 weeks up to 4 weeks. The cost for that is about $1,800 to $2,000. That can be covered 100% with the Workforce Investment Act money that your one-stop center knows completely about. Literally, you can go from 0 to 60 in 4 weeks. Blue Cross, Blue Shield, have enough money to be able to grow and get back into investing. Everyone in the house is going to be walking around with braces on. Everybody's going to feel better because they're going to get checkups. And get this, this is another area that is so hot that you can do this for a year or two, buy your own rig, buy your own bus. 3 or 4 years after that, open up your own company, and 5 or 10 years from now, literally be a multimillionaire by owning this and creating good jobs for other people in Westchester County. The next area that's smoking right now, construction and training, for training certification for construction rather. This is hot. Everybody right now, because everybody's been cooped up for the last year, there are not enough construction workers out there. Housing, I'm looking to build a house on my farm. They said, Jan, we might not be able to start for 3 or 4 months. And the reason why is that everybody that's in construction is very busy. The costs have gone up because there's a shortage of labor. You're looking at anywhere from 13 weeks up to 4 years for certification. Some of these down here, I've got to mention electricity. Starting right now, I know in Prince George's County, it was about $52,000. Westchester, somebody like Con Ed, big power company, you're looking at probably $60,000, $65,000 for starting. By the time you're a master electrician with anywhere from 3 to 5 years, you're making then about $150,000, work 2 more years. Then all of a sudden you can launch your own business, have 5 guys working for you with trucks going out to solve problems for everybody in Tuckahoe. And all of a sudden you're a multimillionaire. Bottom line is these are also jobs that have a great deal of support. You can see the cost for certifications about $3,000 up to $10,000. it can be covered 100% by the county's Workforce Opportunity Act money through its one-stop center. But welding, carpentry, HVAC, electricity, any of these areas are burning up, red hot. Let me shift a little bit and I'll kind of wrap this up. If you're looking to change careers, to get more satisfaction, join a new organization with values that really are aligned with what you really want to do. If you want to get on a new career path, if you want to rapidly increase your short-term and your long-term income, or if you want to manage your career better, that's an opportunity also to be able to go to the one-stop center because they've got a ton of opportunities and resources to help you with. Here are the major blocks that we've all dealt with when we've been out there, and if you're laid off or if you're currently unemployed or underemployed, here are the key things that can really be the things that set us back or that are roadblocks. And a lot of them are self-induced. Number one, no job search skills and expertise, not knowing how to navigate or how to find a new job. No planning, no metrics to track your own weekly performance. A lot of emotional stress. I've been through this. I've had probably in my career, probably 35 jobs. Okay, the best job I've ever had was working for Rob Astorino when I was in Westchester County. I mean, absolutely loved it, found my purpose in life, and it helped me with getting the opportunity in Prince George's County, which I loved that job. But while that was happening, it was very, very emotional, a lot of stress that was going on, and all of us are experiencing that over this last year. Avoidance behavior, thinking, maybe this will all go away. Maybe I won't get a job. Maybe something will come along, and kind of avoiding going after what you need to do on a daily basis to get a new job. Changing relationships. Goodness gracious. I've got to go in here and meet new people. Lack of time management, not being organized, and fear of rejection. These are all self-induced roadblocks that prevent us from being able to get the job that we really want and to make the kind of living and income that we deserve to have. Here are the critical job search steps that I encourage you all to look at. And again, that you can get a lot of help at the One Stop Center in helping you to use these. Developing a personalized marketing communications plan for your job search. Mastering the hiring process. Executing daily productivity metrics for your success. Networking with others. The fastest way you're going to get a job is with everybody on this Zoom call tonight. Friends, relatives, when you go to your own church or synagogue, networking, letting folks know, hey, I'm looking for an opportunity in this area. The people that are around you, your family and friends, that's the fastest way to get another good opportunity. And then executing your plan on a daily basis. Marketing communications plan, establishing your own professional career objective. I want to have a new job making $62,000 in the medical field in Westchester County by the next 90 days. That's a good plan. Developing a positioning statement, making sure that you list all of your strengths and traits about you. Don't walk into an employer and they say, well, tell us about yourself. Well, what do you want to know? That's what 90% of applicants say. What do you want to know? I know right now I can get a new job because I know how to interview. I can interview. It's the tough part is keeping the job. But the most important thing is knowing how to respond to that simple question. Focus on your target market. Size, type, geographical area. If you want to stay in Tuckahoe and build, you've got to look and say, okay, I want to stay in Tuckahoe. I love the village of Tuckahoe, but I want to expand and be able to look at all the job opportunities there in Westchester County. I want to be able to look at companies of different sizes, and you can create that target list by going to your one-stop center. Commit to a target list of 50 to 75 employers, and Westchester County has a ton of employers, but focus on a set, defined list and hammer on it. Mastering the hiring process. 3 key things there. There are 3 reasons why jobs exist. Number 1 is the job applicant pool. That's when an employee at the company has decided to leave or was promoted, and that created the current open job. The second would be a new job was created. That's where you identify and create a need for your skills in an organization. So if you've got friends and relatives that you're talking to about what you want to do, and someone works at one of the great companies, you tell them, here are the skills that I've got. Do you all have that? And here's what I can do to move the needle on sales, reduce cost, improve productivity for your organization. Third is the known candidate. The hiring manager knows several qualified candidates, and they're already out there. They're already identifying them. Oftentimes they can be internal candidates, But you too, if you hear about this, you can jump in there and make yourself a known candidate. These are the daily metrics that you've got to really focus on. And if you're not doing this, you're going to be out of a job for a long time. If you skip a week on it, it just adds an extra week of being unemployed. In today's competitive job market, you got to do this. Talk to at least 40 hiring managers before getting hired. This is talking to them and getting the interviews and talking specifically about what you can do for their organization. Completing 4 full conversations with hiring managers every single week. If you're not on the phone, if you're not Zooming, if you're not talking to folks and networking and having what I consider a good full conversation about what's going on in their company, what position is open, and why you're the best candidate, if you're not doing that 4 times a week, you're getting behind. Complete 40 search-related conversations every single week. And then follow up with each hiring manager every time you talk to them, and do it every single week. And you want to do that because it's going to take anywhere from 5 to 10 up to 15 follow-up conversations with hiring managers before you even get a job. It'll take 5 follow-ups just to get an interview. It's very competitive, but the job opportunities truly are there. I use also LinkedIn. So when you hear about a hot company in Westchester County where they're hiring, you can go on to LinkedIn and find out down to specifically who is the hiring manager in that company so that you can start communicating with them directly through LinkedIn. So I want to wrap it up with the key takeaway. Seize the moment. Don't give up. It's been a tough year. I lost my dear wife, and I'm dealing with grief. I understand pain. My wife and I, my wife's best friend, Rosalind, her husband passed away this year. He was our dear friend. I had COVID. I made a big relocation back to my family farm here in Lexington to rebuild it, and it has not been easy. But don't give up. Seize the moment. Never quit, and don't retreat. Know your purpose in life. Know what you like doing. Because once you find that, it won't be considered a job to you. It's going to be fun. You're not going to be able to stand in the morning. You're going to like, one of my good cousins down here, his name is John from Washington, said, "Cuz you never sleep." I said, "Man, you got enough sleep when you go to heaven." Okay. I'm so excited about life right now. You can sleep later when you get ready to go. When I meet with my wife and get a good rest, that's when I'll get some good sleep. But for now, I'm going to squeeze out as much time as I can each and every day, because I now know my purpose. Perfect your pitch. When somebody walks up to you and says, "Well, okay, what kind of job are you looking for?" Don't say any job. No, you're not. You're not looking for any job. You want to be specific. I'm looking for a nursing job where I can work in the cardiac department and where I can save lives in IC, and I need to be able to make a salary of $48,000, where the hospital will also pay for me to get my bachelor's degree RN, so I will be able to make $75,000 so my husband and I can keep our beautiful home in Tuckahoe. Okay? Find a new job, your current job. If you don't have a job, guess what? You do have a job. You've got really 2 jobs. One is the most important job, is to find a new job. The second, open up a consulting practice. And you don't have to go and get, an LLC, get a business card. You don't want to go in to meet with an employer and they say, "Well, what are you doing?" "Well, I'm currently unemployed." You don't have to say that. Everybody on this call has skills, and you can help somebody, even if you're volunteering. Get a business card. Jim Coleman Consulting. And even if you're not making money, if they ask you, talk about you volunteer, that you provide services to your church. You don't have to say, "Well, I'm not getting paid anything," but you don't even say that. Just say, "Here's what I'm doing in the village of Tuckahoe. Trustee Lee told me that I could come in and, be able to make an impact in my community. And that's what I'm doing right now. And I'm good at being able to create excitement." Stick to your daily metrics. Enhance your interviewing skills. Practice. That's why it's important to call people a lot and practice with friends and relatives, and as well as with all the hiring managers. And the last one, network, network, network. You're on right now. You're going to see that, and you're going to get this out. I know that Trustee Lee's going to have this spread out, but you're on a call right now. There are about 30 people on this call right now. And I network all of the time, and make sure that you're networking. And networking does not always mean that you're going to some event where you're shaking hands and kind of introducing yourself. Get up on the podium. Be a driver in the organization. Get up there and speak. We may not be able to do that as much now because we're in COVID, but right now, do your own Zoom calls. When you're on Zooms, speak up, ask questions, say your name, say who you are and what you're about. It's amazing how many people you will meet by just simply participating and actively participating during these types of Zoom calls. So God bless you all. You all are family to me. I love you. I can't wait for us to be able to travel to where I can come to Tuckahoe and party with you and see you face to face. Hang tough, seize the moment, don't give up, and keep the focus. And God bless you. And that's it. Trustee Lee, I'm going to stop sharing and turn it back over to you. And I'm open for any questions that you may have.
I love your positivity and your uplifting spirit.
Thank you very much.
A smile to all of our faces.
Thank you.
And I wish you the best of luck with everything you're doing.
I feel the same for you all. Everything that you all are doing, God bless you. You're doing wonderful work. I can't, express enough for the great work that you're doing for beautiful Tuckahoe. And you're in my prayers for continued good work. And I hope that that you're able to continue to do it at different levels, not only in Tuckahoe, but throughout the county, because you're a great leader.
Thank you very much, Jim. Okay, before we answer or ask any questions, I just want to recognize we have Mayor Luisi in the audience here and Deputy Mayor Lang. Thank you for joining us. And we will be answering any questions you have. So if you have a question, just if you can raise your hand. The people who don't have their camera on, just unmute yourself. Does anybody have any questions for any of our speakers? Let me see on the other side here.
Actually, Gina, I have a question for Karen.
Yes.
Hi, Karen. How are you? And thank you for joining us tonight. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yep.
So unfortunately, I have a friend who has an issue, and he doesn't necessarily have the coverage that I'm sure some of rehabilitation centers would like to see.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a way that perhaps somebody like that can get help? He had lost his job, and I'm not sure he has benefits anymore, and he's in a really bad spot.
Yes. So actually, we're part of, St. Vincent's Hospital, and our program also has sliding scale fees. So someone could come into the program, fill out an application, and sometimes I will say that some people will be evaluated and it will be determined whether or not what their fee is. We're part of the community fund as well in Maxwell, and we do have funding for people who are underinsured. So, it's important for people to get treatment, whether they have the funds or not. And we will work with people.
So it's just a question of getting him and convincing him to come in and meet with you guys.
Right. Yes.
Well, I'm going to do my best, Karen, to get him in there. So thank you.
Fantastic. I mean, I think that's the big trick right now is how to get people into treatment that need it. And sometimes it takes people that love them and care about them and open up that dialogue, which is sometimes hard to do. But that's what's going to get people to treatment right now, especially if they're not working and they're not in job jeopardy and they're in their home more. People like you can help. But thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you so much.
Okay, anybody else have any questions for any of our speakers?
Gina?
Oh, yes, Diane?
I have a question for Dr.
Mayor
Mack.
Luisi. I'm sorry, go ahead, Diane.
I have a question for Dr. Sullivan.
Oh,
He had mentioned the magic 9 to 10 days. I had never heard that before. So I just wanted to get clarification about that. So are you basically saying that in those first 9 to 10 days, if you have COVID and you have symptoms, those are the crucial days to get help and get hospitalized? Because I know people who have waited and waited, or they've told me about family members who have waited and then are on respirators and things like that. And all I kept thinking is, why didn't they go to the hospital sooner? But there were so many people who were afraid to go to the hospital because of COVID. And then they never knew that they had it until it was a little bit late. So what are your thoughts about that again?
The magic number 9 is I refer to as 9 to 10 days, is very similar to a term, the golden hour of trauma. That hour could be 60 seconds, that hour could be 3 days. There's a point in which any average conscientious provider can make a difference. And then when that time is over, all the king's horses and all the king's men. Rules of thumb, it's a horrible term, but we all are familiar with what it means. So let's turn around and say the average person, by 14 or 15, your immune system is closed. Every T cell you have has been coded for a protein, for a foreign antigen that you've been exposed to, a foreign body, over the first 13 to 12 to 13 years of your life. Now, every lymphocyte has 1 or 2 T cells. They'll make a protein for that thing. There are no more lymphocytes. We all have about 732 to 735,000 of them all over our bodies. Each one has 1 or 2 T cells. Anything you do after that, anything you're exposed to after that, you have to make from a combination of different proteins from different T cells. Every decade after this second decade, after 20, add about 2 or 3 days, because it takes us that much longer. Meanwhile, of course, this thing, whatever it may be, whether it's a bacterial pneumonia in a hospital, whether it's a fungal infection in our skin, or in this case, COVID-19, meanwhile, that's ravaging, and it's doing its damage, while you're hopefully getting some type of intervention at a facility until you can make your own antibodies and kill it yourself. So you get to a point where, as you get older, 3rd decade, 4th, 5th decade, 6th decade, no one in their 50s wants to think of themselves in their 6th decade of life. Well, you are. And what happens is, what you're really looking at is after that first 2 or 3 days that it took to knock things out in your teens and your 20s, add 2 or 3 more. All of a sudden, a guy, gal in her 40s or 50s who's exposed to something, well, now you're talking 10, 12, 16, 14, 15 days before you're going to be able to do something yourself. Intubation, the ventilator, saves countless of lives every day. It got a bad press. Oh, they died in the vent. Go in the vent, it's an 80% failure rate. Right. I can think of a certain internist who is, speaking as an expert at the moment, who it wasn't until day 5 in his driveway, gasping for breath after that long ride home, I might have that thing. I go walking pneumonia every 6 or 8 weeks here. It's part of it. You cough, you get over it. I'm good. No, I wasn't. But if I'm not here, what happens? No, I'm good. No, you're not. And the longer you start to go, I can get through this. This isn't going to happen to me. I'm strong enough to do this. Now you're getting day 7, day 8. Here's the problem. Corona, ubiquitous and relatively harmless. COVID-19, the corona DNA with RNA, with specific chunks of RSV, respiratory syncytial virus. Not very effective at hurting people, but boy, it makes quick copies of itself. Now take not 2 chunks of genetic material from SARS, adult respiratory distress syndrome, but the exact genetic material in the exact configuration that SARS can turn it on, that the RSV can turn those 2 SARS on. Now this one, every time this one corona doubles, yeah, it's making 20 or 40. And that each SARS that makes the SARS protein that binds your hemoglobin, so your hemoglobin really can't carry oxygen anymore. As this process goes on, and that gets higher and higher, and more of your hemoglobin is lost and lost, There's a window where if you get high levels of oxygen, you can push that off. After a while, you can't. And as more of your hemoglobin is bound to SARS protein and not bound to oxygen, now the shortness of breath hits. Now the good news is every 7 or 8 days, your body says, red cell, 7 or 8 days, you're out. It puts out a new one. Well, if your blood is teeming with SARS proteins and they bind that red cell, how long can you go when majority of your new red cells every day are being bound? Eventually you run out of time while you're waiting to form that IgG. So yeah, and there's a lot of, well-meaning, hey, you know what, Bobby's died, I'll go in. Okay, how many 12-hour shifts can you do in a week? There were places, healthcare places, running out of staff. There was one place paying $595 an hour for an ER doc to work by Yankee Stadium. I said, see you, bro, $595. Yeah, because they had no doctors and they had hundreds of patients presenting per hour. And yeah, a friend of mine who took he got sick. He almost lost his life. You're thinking I can do this. There's a great Toby Keith song. I'm not as good as I once was, but once I'm as good as I ever was. I'll get that extra shift. I can take care of that people. I'll bridge it. I can do it. Now day 6 turns into day 7, day 8 to day 9. You're going to get to a point where that ventilator isn't enough to get oxygen onto your hemoglobin that you can carry it to your heart and your brain and your kidneys and all the king's horses and all the king's men. You've eclipsed that golden hour. When someone goes into the hospital before the Recidivir and before some of the more exotic meds that we've got out there now, with the 30 pages of, I know this is experimental, I know it's my own fault, I won't sue anybody. These people, they were showing up on death's doorstep. Not a lot you can do. By June or July, they were going in, had the little nasal cannula, got 2 or 3 days, I'm out. Right now, they're doing significantly better. I've got elderly, I mean 80s, 90s elderly. 2 or 3 days home. Some don't. But the thing is, if you get there, well, you still have enough viable red cells with meaningful amounts of unbound hemoglobin or freshly bound hemoglobin that can be pushed off by high concentrations of oxygen delivered from a nasal cannula, from a face mask, from a ventilated device. You have a real chance. You show up on day 7 or day 8, you don't. And that was the big difference. But that number, that window of time increases as we age. We don't get a lot of time, and eventually you don't form that G, and you don't get that COVID, that SARS protein displaced off that red cell, all the king's horses and all the king's men. The older you are, the harder it's going to get the longer you wait. That's what I'm saying, the biggest thing we've done, and as much as the media and the government, I think in general, should be ashamed of how they've conducted themselves during all this, the information of when to get to a hospital, when to get to a provider, and the few providers who are open is what brought it down. And people get there quicker. Some are neurotic, it's sad. We've allowed people's anxieties to prey, and we've isolated people from each other so they can't talk. And then of course you're just bombarded with all kinds of content all day at home and on the internet and on TV. But the reality is saying, hey, I'm a little older. Hey, I might have some competing issues. I've heard diabetes is one of them. I've heard asthma. My weight might be an issue. I better get in sooner. That saves lives.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Sullivan. Mayor Luisi, did you have a question?
Yes, I did. Thank you, Gina. This question is for Dr. Sullivan. How concerned is the medical community right now with various states across the country pulling back what seems to be a lot quicker than they should in light of the fact that a vast majority of their population has not received the vaccine, and it seems that they're abandoning all this social distancing and the necessary protocols that we've been operating under this last year.
The medical community in private is fragmented horribly, and I think it's confounded a unified response. When you bring up social distancing in a small gathering, the minute someone says, you know, that's only been validated for an active shooter, you know where the conversation's going to go. Problem is, a lot of us were trained as hardcore clinical scientists, and which means don't just show me something. Take the same thing, go to a different population and get the same result. And if you haven't done that, it's going to be very, very hard every day. Doc, I want chondroitin. Doc, I want this. Doc, I want that. I've heard this online. You know what? That might work. I'm an MD supported by a license from New York State. I can't do that. If I give you something, it's got to be, I've got to go chapter and verse to Lancet, JAMA, Medicine and Science and Sports and Exercise, any of these, and say, there it is. Here's the textbook that it's in, and show you the page. If I can't do that, now you get into the do no harm unethical stuff. We're well into that. The mask, I just wanted to check before I came in. Go in the World Health Organization. No proof. A preponderance of studies suggest it may help, but prospectively validated. Now you sit there and go, well, is it worth something? The idea that it causes a disease that came left over from the Spanish flu, that's been disproven a long time ago. But as a research scientist, before I did this, I don't want to say something that I can't back up. So right now you say, well, why are they abandoning this? Well, the thing is, what's the consequence of this? What's the consequence of doing it? What's the consequence of not doing it? A lot of doctors are really uncomfortable, very politically incorrect to say things. There was a physician out in Minnesota early in this process, just trying to educate her patients on constant contact. She went to Harrison, the Bible of internal medicine. Copyright fraud, just took a whole table of principles of viral spreading. It was more a way of saying, this is how it really works. Stay calm. She lost her license for spreading disinformation. It's a very difficult, so doctors are kind of either saying nothing or following the party line. Right now, if you don't have a large population in your state, do you risk the risk of enhancing and exacerbating and providing a nutrient field for those that are there? You know, there's a whole idea, you're treating, you're doing something, some's left. Why is it left? Is it going to grow? Have you made it stronger? So if you're going to sit there and say, well, they're not doing this, they're not doing that, they're pulling back on the vaccine. When you look at something, I don't mean to be a contrarian here. I try to give my patients both sides. If you look at something that has a 99.8% survival rate, and you look at the mass amount of fundings, and you look at schools with no desks, and you look at bridges falling down, as a governor saying, I've got to do the most I can with what I have for the people I've got, it's hard to criticize. So I think in the places that have the biggest problems, they got work to do. In the places that don't, they have to make hard decisions about their resources. Better is the biggest enemy of good. Perfect is the biggest enemy of better. 90% of your healthcare dollar on average is spent in the last 6 months of your life. When we look at the money and the resources being dedicated to COVID right now, and the genuine threat in the community right now, there's a lot of people out there saying, hey, breast cancer is going to dwarf this year. Hey, congestive heart failure is going to dwarf this. It's hard to say they're wrong. So I think physicians in general right now I'm certainly trying to say, I'm answering a question as honestly as possible and trying to keep our own opinions out of it, but they're not necessarily wrong. It's just not necessarily politically correct in the hot spots. Maybe we're sitting here in New York, nobody in this call didn't lose someone, or knows of people who were lost, or lost several, or know people who are, I lost a few. I can't tell you how many are permanently and profoundly disabled, but I'm not in North Dakota with, I mean, Westchester County probably grosses more than North Dakota does. How much can that governor divert her resources and still be ethically doing her job? So I think it's very fragmented. And it's complicated by a lot of docs just not being honest because they don't want to get under the spotlight.
Thank you.
Anybody else have any questions? Okay.
Well, I have a comment, sort of.
Go ahead,
Thank you.
Scooter.
Well, I just wanted to thank all of our speakers and for reminding us. There seemed to be a common thread that fear, whether it's the fear that keeps us from responding in that magic or golden 9 to 10 days, or fear of being open to our kids, and being honest about what we see in them and what's going on with us. Fear that comes from the shame of dealing with drinking or drug problems, and the fear of what the economy is going to look like. That's our greatest enemy as we move forward in this, and that it keeps us from responding and acting in the best ways possible for ourselves and our families. I just want to thank all of our speakers for, in their own unique ways, bringing that up, encouraging us, making us aware of it, and helping us get past it.
Thank you, Scooter. Anybody else have any questions or comments? Okay, so I guess that concludes our evening. After nearly a year of social isolation and sacrifice, the end stage of this pandemic is finally in sight. With many getting vaccinated, people going back to work, and kids getting back to school, we are slowly getting back to a state of normalcy. I'm very proud of our community coming together during this difficult time. The light is at the end of the tunnel, so please stay positive. We're getting there. Thank you again, Karen, Dr. Martuge, Dr. Sullivan, and Jim for this very great meeting. I mean, I'm very pleased to have you all here. The information was huge for our community, and I'm so grateful that you all were able to join us. Thank you to everybody who joined us tonight, and we'll get through this, Tuckahoe, I promise. One day at a time.
Have a great night. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you
so
very
much.
much.
Great. Thank you
Great.
all.
Trustee Lee.
Speakers,
Good
thank
night,
you.
everybody.